Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I'll be going through some basic setups for the Mini Z all-wheel drive series to help you set up your car for drifting. Now the single most important thing people agree on is the differentials, and mostly recommend a locked rear diff together with a front one-way diff, but personally I think it's way more complicated than that. Now there's actually a few different types of differentials. The first one is the open one, which is generally the default one provided by Kyosho. The next one would be a front one-way, which only provides power in one direction. So if you were to reverse, the power is not sent to the wheels, but when you go forward, it is sent to the wheels. Next is a limited slip ball differential. It's a differential that you can tighten or unscrew to make it act more like the lock diff or a open diff, or somewhere in between. Now I have two cars set up here. One is the RX7 FC, which is the MA-020 with a front one-way diff and a rear lock diff, and a MA-030EVO in the R32 body, which is set up with two ball differentials at the front and the rear. Now you may notice that the FC is able to make much more abrupt changes in its direction, and the R32 had to slow down much more before I could make any changes in direction at all. When you pull the brakes on the RC cars, having a front one-way kinda locks the rear wheels, which provides a handbrake-like effect, and it makes the car turn more abruptly and able to let you change direction much quicker, which allows you to drift even tighter corners and smaller hairpins. Without it, you'll just lock out all four of your wheels and kind of understeer. But of course, pulling the handbrake isn't the only way to initiate the drift. You can always do a Scandinavian flick or use power to oversteer. Personally, I prefer two ball differentials for the front and rear, with the rear being tightened a little more, as I find it easier to slow down at higher speeds, and because I plan to use the cars for grip racing as well. But of course, a front one-way diff and a rear lock diff would work really well for most people, especially if you just plan to drift in very small areas, especially at home. I do recommend against using the stock differentials, as it makes the car a bit more unwieldy and unpredictable when doing drifts, as it could loop around more in a slide and do very unexpected turns to the left or right. Now I'll move on to toe settings. Generally, most people will recommend for drifting a negative toe setting, as it provides slightly more steering lock, which will definitely help you pull off larger drifts with larger angles. Now moving on to suspension. It doesn't really matter the stiffness of your suspension, as most of the time when we are drifting, the car stays relatively flat due to a low grip surface. What does matter, however, is the camber settings. As the suspension stays relatively flat, the camber is effectively a way to reduce your grip in the front or the rear, where more camber equals less grip. Another thing that's not really been talked about, at least for drifting, is how body shells actually affect the handling of the car. Different body shells actually have different weight distributions that affect how well the car turns in and how well it holds its drift. For example, the WRX on screen is way more willing to turn and hold a drift compared to the R32, which is actually more stable, because the WRX has a slightly forward biased weight and it's shorter than the R32, which allows it to turn a bit better. Interestingly, the WRX actually turns way better than the RX7 FC, even though the FC has a shorter wheelbase, and I'm guessing it's because it's more front biased and the body is actually shorter despite having a longer wheelbase. But honestly, to sum it all off, the best way you can improve your drifting is to just keep drifting. Thanks for watching.